Welcome back, I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, we're introducing the 944 to the channel, and this is a good one. This is a 1990 Porsche 944 S2 Cabriolet. You don't see very many Cabriolets around. They are kind of rare. I think they only made about 2,400 of these, and it was a very complicated build process. But it is still powered by the 3-liter 4-cylinder, making 208 horsepower, about 207 pound-feet of torque, rear-wheel drive, all driven through the 5-speed manual transaxle at the rear. I love the style, the look, the boxy fenders, but this was a very expensive car. And if you wanted the Cabriolet over the coupe, you would spend $6,700 to chop off this roof and add about 100 pounds of weight, because the way they built these was a little complicated. It started its life as a coupe. Then from the Audi factory where it was assembled and built, it went to ASC, the American Sunroof Corporation or Company. I feel like I've read that written so many different ways. That's where they chop off the roof, they reinforce everything in the car, so there's lots of additional strengthening steel in this thing. Then it goes back to the Audi factory where it gets its drivetrain and its paint, and then it goes back to ASC where it gets its convertible top and finishes off. So it's definitely an expensive build. I'm sure Porsche was not making very much money on these cars, but the 944, despite being sort of the Volkswagen Porsche successor to the 924, is still a very cool thing to see and operate. And I know it's still a bummer if someone says, oh, I've got a Porsche, and you're thinking 911 and they come in a 944. 944 still has a charm all its own. So first, let's just start with the style. It kind of has an RX-7 vibe to it, although a bit bigger. And what's cool about the Cabriolets is not just that they chop the roof off of it, they actually lower that windshield about 2.4 inches. So it's a sleeker look. It definitely has a style all its own. Pop-up headlights, we like that. That's always a fun thing to have in your sports car, something you weren't getting in a 911 unless you had a slant nose. And then, oh boy, check out this interior. Obviously, this is not original. Somebody took the time to make it their own. There's even a Kenwood stereo in there with a reverse camera, which actually genuinely appreciated. But let's take a listen to this warning chime. They always kind of sounded like they were dying, but even when they were new. This one only has 34,000 miles on the clock, which is fantastically cool to see one that's relatively well preserved despite some nicks and, you know, wear and tear. It's just neat to see that someone probably really cared about their 944. Now this one's even a little more rare because of the color. This one is Zyclam Red Pearl Effect, and in other places you might refer to it as cyclamen red. This is a Will Lee, this is a PTSRS kind of discussion, and I actually asked him about this, and I don't know why they used both, but it is what it is. I don't know if any official cyclamen exists, or if it's all Zyclam, or if they're all Zyclam, and some people just call them cyclamen. I've seen it written everywhere, so you, as the Porsche files, can hash it out in the comments. But either way, this does look pretty sleek. This one has been upgraded with some BBS wheels, and behind it you get some big old 4-pot stoppers, which is lovely. But what's funny about this car is you can see the attempt at protecting some of these surfaces because of the box fenders and things with some PPF, and it is all cracked, but it's doing the job. Over here you've got the 16-valve badge, which is particularly entertaining because no one was really that thrilled to have a $47,000 4-cylinder back in the 80s and 90s, so they had to go with bigger numbers. Around back, this is probably my favorite angle of the car. You get a clear shot at those box fenders. You can really see how wide this thing is, and that reminds me of E30 M3s. It just has that sort of German race car look. And down here, the shape of this sort of rear valance is fantastic. And in the boot, let's take a look back here. We've got room for our stuff, but what I like about this is back here you've got a space saver spare tire, and you could even pop down those rear seats. So you could fully pass through this, so you could actually use it for some relatively normal things. The top, it doesn't work. It is electric though, it's electronic. It'll actually allow you to use a button to retract it. You are supposed to put this little tonneau on top to make sure that none of the inner workings get jumbled up with dust and dirt and grime, because you want it to keep working, which apparently this one does not. But let me show you under the hood. And the struts do not work on this hood, so we will be holding it up. But there you have it, our 3-liter inline 4. To make this thing balanced, Porsche went through some painstaking efforts and realized that they were likely not going to be able to finish in time, nor had the money for the R&D. So they actually licensed balancing technology from Mitsubishi. So thanks to Mitsubishi's 4-cylinder balance, this could live. That's what they started off at back in the 2.5-liter days in the early 944s and graduated up to this. So 3 liters is a pretty monstrous 4-cylinder if you think about it. We've got our little finger pincher door handles, very similar to Volvo's at the time. And also down here, you've got a handbrake that is on the left, a little unusual and actually kind of difficult to put down because unlike Aston Martin, this does not retract back down even though it's engaged. It actually stays right there. Not in the way because of the seat, but when you put it down, it is pretty low, so your fingers will get a little pinched. Let's take a listen. It has quite the bassy rumble. I gotta show you the pop-up headlights to reduce that coefficient of drag, but I guess you don't care, you're driving a convertible anyway. So let's get in and take it for a drive. I've always really liked the layout of a 944. This dashboard is so clean and simple and sort of un-Porsche-like, which just struck me. I'm realizing I was driving an Audi 100 over the winter from the 90s, and this looks a lot like an Audi 100 dashboard. And maybe maybe this is a lot more Audi than I ever really gave it credit for. Let's get it off the line. I wouldn't call it fast, but it definitely continues to pull. So it's confident with its torque. I do like the top end sound of this engine though. You notice I'm not like bringing it straight to redline. It kind of falls off. I mean, I don't feel any need to actually go all the way to redline here. What that is, but it looks safe to go around. This is pretty agile. Porsche wasn't in a great financial position in these times. They were trying to replace the 911 with the 928, decided that wasn't the greatest idea. They come out with the 924 and the 944. They're looking to kind of amplify their portfolio and get new models out there, but I don't know, consumers just like aren't really hitting on these things. And you're thinking a 4-cylinder Porsche, yuck, but remember, that's where Porsche started. Porsche 356s are flat 4 air coolers, and that is not what this is. There's really no lineage from those cars to this car, other than maybe a transaxle, I suppose, but these cars still represent Porsche in a time period. Like, no one doesn't know what a 944 is. However, if you were to say, oh, hey, I've got a Porsche and rolled in a 944 and not a 911, it still isn't quite the same thing. And these were not cheap. They were still nearly $50,000 in the 90s, in the early 90s. That's a ton of money. So what are we going for here? And who are you competing with? Because if you're looking at the 1990, you've got Miatas out there. You've got RX-7 convertibles. You've got Jaguars. It kind of is its own little thing. And this is actually something I liked about that market, was that cars could kind of fill their own spaces. Got the amphibian crossing sign. We don't want to hit any frogs. Not a very wet day though, so I think we're going to be okay. People like to walk their dogs here, and they like to walk their dogs fully extended on a leash. So I always take that corner a little slow and a little wide. Let's see what this turning radius is like. Oh wow, that's actually genuinely impressive. I think the 944 is actually pretty athletic. I mean, I don't know that you're buying the Cabriolet to be the track star, but who cares? Like, at this point, numbers do not matter. It doesn't matter if this does a 7.5 to 60 or a 6.9 to 60. Who cares? You'll never, ever, ever be taking this and like measuring it against anything else. It's just if you like it. And I think the top-down experience in this is really fun. I also just like really dig this chopped speedster style windshield. Fantastic roads. Appreciate the cone though for the pothole. At least they've given us that courtesy. Down low here, I mean, we're still making peak torque, but it's just such a bassy, rumbly kind of engine. It feels like you need a subwoofer to fully understand what this sounds like if you're listening on your computer. That kid losing his mind. I don't know why. It's just a 944, bud. It's okay. I don't want to yuck anybody's yum. This shifter is, I think it's the same shifter you'd find in a 964. It's very familiar in the hand. And every gear feels precise and understandable, and I do really enjoy the driver-centric nature of this car. Everything does feel like it is designed for me. I do kind of forget that I'm in a Porsche, though. I mean, I guess it says it right here on this big airbag steering wheel. But I don't know. I'm used to a 911, so it does feel a little strange. What's interesting, though, is that the 911 feels like more archaic than this, just because that's an air-cooled flat six and a rear engine. This does feel like it should have been the natural evolution of Porsche, and it just didn't really take. I will say it is fun to drive. It doesn't feel so tightly wound either. A lot of Porsches, you feel like you got to wind them out a lot, and that's great. That's part of the fun, but this has a completely different character. It feels like it's really happy to sit in this mid-range, and I know this is maybe not what you want to be hearing, but it feels more like my 2-liter Mark III Golf engine than it does a 911. It really has. If you've ever driven a 2-liter Volkswagen from the 90s, you kind of get what this does. It just does it a little better. This is a lot more fun than I anticipated. I always forget kind of how enjoyable 944s are to drive. Despite the vast difference in the way they behave compared to what we think of as Porsches. Great horn. Guess I should use my blinker. It's not a BMW. So I think that's gonna do it for the S2 cab. This is neat. This is kind of more fun to drive than I expected. I can't imagine spending nearly $50,000 on this new. You really were making a choice back then. You were saying, I don't want a 911. I want this. And I don't know that that was the right choice then, but now, I mean, these aren't wildly expensive. I'm sure 944s, ooh, McLaren. I'm sure 944s are like having a time, having their day, having their, you know, dude, this guy just can't pay attention. And I feel like everybody knows somebody with a 944 that probably spent too much on maintenance and this and that, but why do you think that is? I think it's because they love them. I think it's because 944 owners are a breed all their own, and they really, really, really loved their cars. I know so many 944 owners who are track people who just, no matter what these things needed, they were going to spend the money on it. They were going to DIY it. They were going to tear it down in their own garages and do the work. In fact, I've got a friend, Noah, who has a 968 that it's the only 968 I've ever driven. And his grandfather bought it new and then passed it down to him. And Noah rebuilt this engine. And now I think he's turbocharged it. Why? Because it's sentimental, because it's cool, because these are shapes, these are cars that maybe aren't the pinnacle of Porsche, but they certainly matter, and they are good driver's cars. So anyway, I'm gonna go bring this thing back to Bond Group. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive. Leave some comments if there's cars you want to see this season or offer up to me, because maybe we'll make it work. Maybe if you're in the New England area and you've got something odd or fun or unique or just fast or painfully slow, I'm up for whatever. I like driving. So heck, if you got a Zamboni, let's go. I wanna treat the ice. But anyway, don't forget to respect the drive, and I will see you in the next one. Whoa, wasn't expecting that move. Always be vigilant. Keep those cameras rolling. I love this red, but the names, man. Cyclamen sounds like an antibiotic, and Zyclam sounds like cold medication.